Here's chapter 8, recording 5. We'll continue talking about additional equipment that is used to move patients. On your screen right now is the basket stretcher, also called a Stokes litter or Stokes basket. It's very rigid. It's used to carry patients across uneven terrain from relatively remote locations that you can't take an ambulance or other vehicles into. If you actually look on the Weebly site, I believe I put my picture that I'm using this in on a RIMS rescue, so a rough terrain rescue up around Billings, Montana. It's used for technical rope rescues as well as some water rescues. Kind of depends on what the situation is. If the patient has a suspected spinal injury, you need to make sure that you secure them to a backboard first and then put the backboard itself inside the stretcher. When you go into your ambulance after that, then you can go ahead and take the backboard out and put it on just the cot itself. You either have basket stretchers that are made of plastic with an aluminum frame, or they can have a full steel frame that's got kind of this woven mesh in the center, so water is able to drain out of the center of the stretcher. Scoop stretchers we have mentioned already as well. These are also called orthopedic stretchers. They are designed to either break down into 2 or 4 pieces. You end up taking those pieces and fit them around a person that's laying on the ground, and then connect all of them back together, lift them up, and then it's recommended that you put them onto a backboard. If you can't get to both sides of the patient, you can't use a scoop stretcher. A neonatal isolette, this is sometimes called an incubator. Just straight up neonatal patients can't be transported on a wheeled ambulance stretcher. They are going to get extremely cold very quickly. And so these isolettes actually circulate warm, moistened air and kind of protect the baby from everything that's going on around them, such as noise, drafts, infection. Handling even can be bad for a neonate. You can take the isolettes that we have and place them on a regular stretcher and then secure them with seat belts, or you can have them freestanding and secured into the back of the ambulance right where you would actually put the cot. You can choose to forego the cot and just put the isolette down. When we have equipment, obviously it's going to get dirty, and we need to make sure that we decontaminate each piece of equipment properly after use. It keeps us safe, it keeps our crews safe, it keeps the patients safe, and then we don't want to be spreading a lot of disease around, which can happen from our equipment. Make sure that you know your local protocols for disinfecting your equipment. Every piece of equipment has to have either the ability to be thrown away or the ability to be properly cleaned and decontaminated. Patient positioning. So this is all going to be based off of your chief complaint. If your patient has a head injury, shock, spinal injury, pregnancy, etc., it's going to call for special lifting and moving techniques, and then you're going to have to position that patient appropriately. If the patient doesn't have a suspected spine injury, is reporting chest pain or respiratory distress, they should be placed in a position of comfort. Pretty much anybody that doesn't need to be put on a backboard or immobilized in some fashion, typically a semi-Fowler is going to be an appropriate position, or you're going to allow them to position themselves and then just give them pillows or blankets so that we can support them in whichever position they want to be in. Patients in shock should be placed supine if at all possible. This makes it a lot easier for blood to return up to the heart. If they are having a hard time breathing, good luck trying to get them to lay down. Pregnant patients pose very interesting risks for us in situations. When they get towards the middle of their pregnancy, they're no longer going to want to lay on their back. That baby will actually end up compressing on the major vein that drains the lower half of the body, and they'll end up getting extremely lightheaded. So we actually have to tilt them over onto their left side to keep baby off of that vasculature. Patients with no suspected spinal injury that are unresponsive should be placed in the recovery position, and we did talk about this several chapters ago. A patient who's nauseated or vomiting should be transported in a position of comfort, and obese patients position the same as any other patient with a similar condition, which most of the time is going to be position of comfort. Make sure that you ensure their dignity, though. Medical restraints. Make sure that your patient is fully evaluated first to see if you can come up with a reason why they're combative. Patients that have head injuries, don't have enough oxygen, or are hypoxic, or those with low blood sugar, which is the hypoglycemia, they tend to be combative, but they have a reversible cause. Fix the problem, fix the combativeness. Make sure that you follow your local protocols. You may be required to obtain medical control authorization before you can actually restrain a patient. If you don't follow all of the necessary steps, there could be legal consequences for placing restraints on a patient because it's false imprisonment. And then you also can have assault and battery charges on top of that. Typically, in order to restrain a patient, you're going to need several people to make this happen. We may not have enough, but if you do, 5 people is what we definitely want. 1 for each extremity, 1 for the head, and then one of those people is going to take the team leader. Before you actually restrain the patient, try and speak to them in a calming manner, try and de-escalate the situation so that you can avoid actually having to restrain them. If not, have a plan with everybody as to how you're going to restrain the patient. And if you can catch them off guard, there's less of a chance that you're going to end up being injured in the process. When you restrain a patient, they are always face up. We always put them in the supine position. When I first started in the field, we would put a patient on a backboard and flip them over face down. I mean, you'd have a face to one side or the other, but that way it'd be a lot harder for them to spit on you. We don't do this anymore because patients were dying from a condition called positional asphyxia. They're basically suffocating because of the way that they were positioned. So no more face down. Everybody is going to be supine. You're going to want to apply a restraint to each extremity, and then you want to restrain in different positions. So one arm goes up above the head, one arm goes down at the side, so that they're not using the same force, the same directional force, in order to try to escape those restraints. If you put both over the head, then they have all those extra muscles within the abdomen and back and shoulders to try and come out. If you do both of them down, same thing. They can use all of those muscle groups in coordination with each other to try and break the restraints. If you put one way and one the other way, they're going to be fighting against each other to try and get those out. So definitely a much safer. Make sure that you assess ABC's mental status and circulation after the restraints are applied, and then you need to recheck them frequently to make sure that as the patient moves around and struggles, that they don't end up cutting off circulation. Yes, they are going to hurt. They don't feel great, or at least uncomfortable. I shouldn't say hurt. They're going to be uncomfortable and they're going to beg you for removal. We don't remove them. You want to document, make sure that you cover all of your bases within why you ended up restraining, and that you checked before and after you placed the restraints, and then how many times you checked after all of that and what you found. Some personnel considerations when you are going to be lifting and moving a patient. Are you physically strong enough to lift or move the patient, or do you need help? Is there enough room to get a proper stance to lift the patient? Sometimes we have to rearrange a room, and by that I mean push the bed out of the way, move the couch. Yes, I know that a lot of people are very particular about how they keep their house, but our safety comes first and foremost, and then getting them out safely is very important as well. They can move their couch back, they can move their bed back, or have somebody do it for them. We need to stay in the moment to keep ourselves and our patients safe. And this is the last recording for Chapter 8.